Hey everybody, welcome back to the High Performance Zone. Today I have Robyn Benincasa. You know, Robyn and I are good friends. She actually is one of the best adventure racers in the world. In this podcast, we're going to talk about stories about the 8 essential leadership lessons and how to apply those. But it really starts with waking up, kissing your dog. That's how she wakes up every single morning. I do too. Then we get into, how do you build courage? How do you build synergy within a team? I think you're really going to enjoy this. I know I had a blast on it. Stay strong. Here we go. Robyn and Gucci, hit it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the High Performance Zone. I have Robyn Benincasa with me today in the house. Robyn and I have we have so much in common, Robyn. I think about your adventure racing, but I think about the world-class speaker you are. First off, I just want to say welcome to the High Performance Zone and glad you're wearing our Glad to Be Here t-shirt.
I am glad to be here. How could you not be?
Yeah, but what does that mean to you today? To me, gratitude is one of the keys to everything, right? What does glad to be here mean to you right now in this moment?
Oh gosh. Well, having just come off a 3-day adventure with a group of survivors.
Oh, you did?
And yeah, survivors and fundraisers. We did a kayak and bike ride from Key Largo to Key West, 120 miles down all the Florida Keys. And you can't help but, I don't even know how many times I said, I'm just so glad to be here, or just glad to be here. Like, honestly, those exact words, because we're just so glad to be here with these group of amazing people who've survived these crazy medical or traumatic setbacks in one of the most beautiful places on earth, and our ability to take every pedal stroke and every paddle stroke and see the beautiful day and feel the sun, and you truly just glad to be here.
Man, I'm with you. Is this part of Project Athena? Is that what you did?
Yeah.
Tell everybody about that. By the way, thank you for giving back to so many people and giving them hope. But tell us about Project Athena.
So Project Athena started because after many, many years of adventure racing and ultra endurance sports, I discovered I had end-stage osteoarthritis in both my hips. And so yada, 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 I've had 6 hip replacements. Don't even get me started. And
is that where your nickname Bionic Hips comes from?
Yeah, exactly.
Go
and so I decided, because I kind of, instead of adventure racing, I said, well, let me focus on what I can do instead of what I can't do.
Nice.
And so I decided to kind of be what if I could become an ultra endurance paddler? Because I don't really need to run, to do that. Maybe I can just paddle really silly long distances. And so I just started kind of creating my own comeback after a setback in the form of, ultra endurance kayaking. And then I went, wait a minute, I can do this for other people. I can now take this adventure, background and experience that I have and these teamwork skills that I have and that my teammates have taught me, and use this to help survivors live an adventurous dream as part of their recovery. So that started in 2009. We started taking survivors on crazy, hairy, ridiculous ultra endurance adventures so that they could do something that their families would never even do as healthy people, but yet these survivors are coming home having hiked all the way across the Grand Canyon in one day, or kayaked and ridden bikes from Key Largo to Key West, or hiked 50 miles up the coast of San Diego. And so they just go home as such badasses. It's the best thing on earth. And their families just see a huge change in their levels of confidence and their belief in themselves again. And it's my favorite thing in the whole world. So we go on those adventures about 6 times a year, and we do some of the coolest ultra adventures in the world. And we take fundraisers too, by the way. So
yeah, good. No, I know you're out there doing it like crazy. Hey, today's the one you just got back from. Was that all bike, or did you also do paddle boarding, kayaking? What was part of the regimen?
Yeah, each day we kayaked 7 to 12 miles and rode 25 to 35. So Beautiful. It's kind of like a mini triathlon each day as we make our way down the coast.
So how many days did it take from Key Largo?
3 days. We do 3 days because we kind of sleep at night, make sure we're not hurting anybody too much. It's enough to feel like you did a really ultra endurance thing without being out of commission for the next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a client who has been on one of those with you. And I got to tell you, Robyn, she talked about how much you gave her, again, inspiration and faith, and just how powerful going on one of those adventures was with you. So I just want to say, nice job on making a difference in people's lives. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Like, it's the best thing in the world. And we were like super thrilled. Like, we became CNN heroes a few years ago. And so that was a really cool thing. Like, I felt like that was the universe telling me that like, hey, this is a pretty cool way to make a comeback. And
yeah, what an honor, the CNN hero. And hey, you remember being at Ashley together? That was only a couple months ago, but I saw you on stage. I kicked it off. You closed the event and you rocked that crowd. I mean, they were chanting, "Yay! Robyn, Robyn, Robyn." You remember that?
Wait, well, I think you did that.
No. That was all you, girl.
I think that was so excited to see you. But that was the one where it was so funny because you had so much fun. Bless their hearts. Yeah. Those people are amazing at Ashley Furniture. You had so much fun that you actually stayed over.
I did.
You stayed overnight and then came back the next day because they were like such amazing people.
Yeah, and that normally doesn't happen in our world so much. Sometimes you go to event, but that was such a powerful event. And I actually did a debrief with their leaders during lunch the next day, and really spent some quality time with that organization. But I wanted to make sure I was there for you because I knew you were coming in, and we were kind of bookending that event of high performance teams, world-class teams, and I really wanted to make sure that you got the right send off, and you crushed it. By the way, they called me up afterwards. They said, "Robyn crushed it."
Yay. Oh, that's so sweet. I didn't know you stayed for me. That's so cool.
Yeah. I saw about the first half of that. Hey, speaking of that, we got so many things we could talk about. Like one of the things that hit me right off was just mental preparation and focus, to do an adventure race at the level that you've done it. And with teams, talk to me a little bit about, on the Blue Angels, we take, pre-flight, not pre-flight, but every briefing very, very serious, right? Tell me about your mental preparation and focus. What's your normal routine for that?
Gosh, well, there's the panic. There's the several weeks of panic leading up to it. The packing and the organizing and are we going to be okay? And are we going to get lost? And what's the weather going to be like? And, everyone goes through all that stuff leading up to a big challenge. But there's something magical about when you get with your team, when you arrive where you're going to be, your teammates are there, and you realize that, wait a minute, we don't have to know how to handle everything because together we can handle anything, nice. That comes our way. And you did like a calm would come, after I got all my stuff packed, there would be like a calm about what was going to happen in the race, because I knew we were in the same boat, with everybody else. Everyone else was facing the same things that we were. And it was all about who could manage adversity the best and create synergy the best. And I knew that no matter what, my teammates and I were among the best in the world at both of those things. So there'd be that calm that would come over you.
Oh, I love that calm, the calm before the storm per se. And it's that visualization. I know I use a lot of visualization, right? To maintain that calm inner energy. Meditation too. By the way, do you meditate?
Not per se, not in the formal way.
Yeah.
But when I do my long runs and long rides, that's where I don't know where I've been like the last hour. I have no idea, how I got to where I am. And
I call that dynamic focus, by the way. So, most people think meditation is, sitting down, cross-legged, eyes closed. No, meditation is just focused awareness, right? And you can do that on a bike. You can do it, riding. I mean, there's so many different ways to get into that high state of focused awareness. Do you have a daily practice? Like when you wake up in the morning, what is your routine? Do you have a morning routine? I'm talking about every day, not just an adventure race.
Well, first there's the 20 minutes of kissing the dog.
I love it. What kind of dog you got? What is it?
She's like a random mutant. Oh, do we have a picture? Do we have a picture of her?
Oh, I'd love to see her.
My husband Jeff is over here. He's getting
awesome,
involved in
Jeff.
the show. There's the 20 minutes of dog kissing. So we rescued her, I guess about 8 years ago. And so like, honestly, like every single morning I set the alarm for 20 minutes of kissing the dog. And then that's just the best start to any possible day right there.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, does Jeff get any kisses or is it only the dog?
Oh, the dog loves kissing Jeff.
All right. But I mean, from you to Jeff, from you
Not
to
in the
Jeff.
morning. No, she kisses him for 10 minutes and then she kisses me for 10 minutes. And
Right.
it's the cutest thing in the whole world. She loves him so much. It's the cutest thing. But I'm like a big.
So real quick, we're on dogs. So we just rescued a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Okay. My wife and I, Carol, and her name's Ruby. We rescued her about 6 months ago. And every morning, so she stays in her crate. She loves her crate, but every morning about 6 a.m., she'll come up to the bed and she'll ask to get on the bed. And of course, what do? We pull the covers down, we let her get in, pull the covers over her, and she just snuggles up with us. Aww. So that's our morning routine, snuggling with the dog.
Yay. We are like separated at birth, you and me. That's like the best way to start the day. And then, but I'm always, I don't know about you, but I always like to do the hard stuff first. Whatever the hard stuff is that day, do the hard stuff first. And that way you've already accomplished a ton before the rest of your day kicks in. Oh, Puppis. Wait, hold on.
We got the picture. Here we go. We got the doggy maybe.
How do I do this? Wait.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, nice. What's her name? What's her name?
Oh, her name is Smelly Bear. No, her name is Valentine.
Valentine.
Isn't it? She's so cute. She's the best.
Awesome. Oh yeah, look at her in focus now. That's awesome.
I know. Nice. She's the cutest thing. She's so freaking cute. And yeah, so that was her name when we got her. I think she was born on Valentine's Day.
So your morning routine of doing the hard stuff first, does it change when you're in an endurance race, an adventure race? Or what does that morning routine look like?
Oh gosh, there's no morning because there's no sleeping. So
really?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to win, in the races that we did, in the paddling races that I do now, you pretty much have to run about at least 22 hours a day. And so we discovered that you have to get about through one REM cycle, not the first night, but starting the second night, you have to get through one REM cycle to get your brain back so that you can navigate. But usually so we'll probably get an hour and a half of sleep every 24 hours on these things at best. If it's a 3-day race or less, like the sprints, that you would just roll, you just run all the way through. So, it's a head game. It's a head game about, cause I would always start mentally falling apart a little bit when it got cold. My kryptonite was cold and dusk. Once it was night, I was okay because then I was looking forward to morning. But when as it started getting dark, that's where I would, just the dark and the cold and the long night ahead of getting lost in bushwhacking and swimming in cold class 4 rivers and traveling on glaciers all night. And, just looking forward to that and how gnarly it was going to be. Those were the really, tough times. And then the sleep deprivation, where you literally have no idea who your name is, who you're hiking with, where you are in the world. And I mean, that's really where you have to rely on your team, because you're very literally going mentally blind through the world. And if your team wasn't near you, with you, we always kind of had a rule that as long as we had 2 people awake, we would keep going, and we just put the other 2 on a tow line, or just keep pushing them ahead of us and say, just go to that tree. And if you just tell people one thing, they can kind of do it, but they can't handle any complex tasks whatsoever. But if we had 3 people go down, that's when we knew it was time to sleep. Because we made that mistake only once, where we went 3 entire days racing without sleep, 3 entire days and nights. And we ended up, all of us, we have no idea what happened the prior 7 or 8 hours, but all of us ended up in this huge field about a quarter mile from each other, asleep. And we had no idea what had happened the last 7 or 8 hours. By the time we regathered ourselves, we're like, okay, that was a waste. So,
right. Right. So when you're being challenged in those moments of sleep deprivation and your mind, how do you bring it back to focus? What do you have any techniques?
Well, when you have a team, I mean,
Yeah.
I've always come back to team, because in my
Yeah.
brain, like during my toughest challenges, except when I'm doing these all night long crazy paddling races, but I would always have a teammate. Like, I had certain teammates that knew the soundtracks to certain to certain records and certain songs, and they would always like we would just sing at the top of our lungs, or even if they just held my hand, I could get, you know, we would just walk all night holding hands and like not even saying a word, but just that there's another connection to a human being, for
Right.
me, changed everything. When I'm racing solo, oh God, it gets gnarly. It gets gnarly, like in the cold, in the dark, you're falling asleep, you're in class 2 and 3 water. If you flip your boat, you may never see it again. You have no way to get to the sides of the river because it's moving too fast. Like, you know, like that, it becomes almost like an adrenaline kind of forced focus, you know, when you almost tip and then you can be awake for another 5 or 6 minutes. But, you know, I don't have a certain, you know, technique where I talk myself off the ledge. What I have is hope. I keep telling myself,
There you go.
the sun's going to come up. There's a part of the river where it's going to get calmer ahead. I just know there's going to be something calm ahead. I know another person's going to come up next to me. So like, I keep thinking of these things that I want to manifest coming into my life. You know, like there's a ray of sun, or there's, you know, oh, I see a house around that bend, and at least there's other people. Like just these positive things that I hope and dream are going to happen. And then I just kind of cling to each one of them and create new ones until they appear.
Oh, that's hugely helpful. I was talking to another speaker once, and we are talking about, you know, belief levels, right? You know, how do you instill a belief level? And I love when you're talking about your teammates can help you rise to a different level of belief, right? And I was thinking about, he had his famous quote. He said, you know, it was actually for USC. Oh God, who's the coach for the Seattle Seahawks right now? Do you remember? I can't believe it.
Carroll?
Yeah, Pete Carroll. Nice job. Yeah, Pete Carroll. So he was working with Pete Carroll. Good job. And Pete said, you know, I can't get the players to believe. And he said, well, tell them this. Tell them to hang on to your belief, you know, to win a national championship. Hang on to your belief until they get one of their own. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a pretty cool, you know, tidbit. Talk about beliefs and teammates. Yeah, go for it.
So I have a concept of like where our courage comes from.
Good.
And, you know, kind of that same thing, courage, belief. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that it comes from one of 3 places. Like there's some people that are just born with that crazy courage. You know, they're just like, yeah, whatever. I was just meant to be successful. You know, and I know that whatever path I take, if I work hard enough and I try hard enough and I keep my head open and my heart big, I'm going to make it. Like I'm going to be just fine. But then there's also, it's kind of 3 B's. You're going to be born with it, or you can build it, or you can borrow it, which is exactly what you were saying. And when I talk about like building courage, you know, I've always like, my friends laugh at me, but even since I was like way back in the day, I was like, you know, all this crap about like Disney princesses just believing in themselves. I was like, that's crap. Like,
yeah.
You can't just believe in yourself like without reason. That's ridiculous. You know, so I was like, I always said like just purely believing in yourself is for like Disney princesses. You know, you gain your belief in yourself by doing hard shit and right. and being successful at it and putting big things on your calendar and you know, saying, well, I got over that hurdle. What if I can do one that's an inch higher? And right. I've always thought since I was younger too, that every time I do something to really challenge myself or something that scared the bejesus out of me, that I've earned a brick for my confidence wall. And it's my mission to build my confidence wall as high as I can, brick by brick, because in essence, like the height of your confidence wall that you've built should be in direct proportion to the amount of courage that you have moving forward through the world, because you have so much confidence based on real experience, right? Not just believing in yourself, like real, you know, rubber meets the road experience, that you can now move forward and say, now I have this confidence to do something because I was successful at something else. And the higher that confidence wall is, the more courage that you have, moving forward. And then of course you can borrow your courage. And I always say that, like, you can borrow your courage from two things: having a higher sense of purpose, right? When you're doing something for someone, instead of like for yourself, when you have that huge, big, hairy goal, but it's on behalf of someone or something else, you have a lot more courage, you have a lot more grit to accomplish it when you're going to be letting somebody else down if you can't help them achieve something. And then you can borrow it by surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, like people who love your show. If you surround yourself with people who love your show, you can borrow your courage from them. And I did that every single race, like all the time. I mean, probably the line that I said the most in races, guys, are we going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? I always raced with the Aussies and Kiwis because they always told me it was going to be all right. They're like, oh, she'll be all right. She'll be all right. Okay. It's going to be great. It's going to be fine.
Why is that the Aussies and the Kiwis? Do they have a certain persona about them?
No worries, mate. That's the Aussies. And the Kiwis, it was always, oh, she'll be all right. I mean, it didn't matter. Like, I didn't care if they were lying to me. They lied to me all the time, but they just told me it was going to be all right. And I believed them. But it always was all right. Like, it's at some degree, like, it wasn't perfect, but we made things work, and if you make them work better than the other teams, then you win. It's never going to be pretty the entire time. It's like, how do you manage your adversity? How do you leave your ego at the start line enough to ask for help and accept help? And, and like, those are like these, key essential elements that, that create, amazing human synergy, which is actually, my original presentation, not the one that you saw per se, but that I've been doing forever and ever, it's literally an acronym for teamwork. Those essential elements that create that human synergy.
Well, you wrote that book on the 8 essential elements, right?
Yeah.
How winning works.
Yeah. How winning works.
Well, give me just, won't go through them all in detail, but let's tap into what you consider the 8 essential elements of a winning team.
Okay. So it was kind of cool when I was first asked to speak about it. It was totally by accident. And basically my team had just won the world championships in Ecuador. And we got a call from Fast Company magazine saying, like, hey, we're doing an article called Extreme Teamwork, and we want to talk to some of like the world's most consistently high performing teams and see what we can learn from them and apply to fast moving companies. And so they got a hold of us and a team like of people from NASA and Industrial Light and Magic and a team of Navy SEALs, and like they interviewed all of us and they wanted to see what they could apply, to business. And then they were having a reader conference, and they wanted one of us from our team to come and talk at the reader conference. And I like drew the short straw. They're like, I was like the newest person on the team. Well, because we're all like relative, introverts, so like nobody was jumping at this big opportunity. And so there I was. I started writing down like, what was it that made our team got kind of successful? And like, just like Stairway to Heaven, all of a sudden, like there it was. It was just like all the lyrics were just right there. Like I was like, oh my God, this is almost an acronym for teamwork. This is nuts. And so I made an acronym for teamwork. And so tell me if you agree with this, because this had to be you guys too. All right. So total commitment, not to the start line, to the finish line, kind of which you demonstrate with planning, purpose, perseverance, and preparation. The E is empathy and awareness, that human connection, to each other. The A is adversity management. How do you handle that crazy, tough times together through challenge and change? The M is mutual respect. The W is we thinking versus me thinking. The O is ownership of the project. The R is relinquishment of ego. And the K is kinetic leadership, meaning like leadership that always flows and changes in terms of like changing leaders and changing leadership styles. And on a world-class team, that leadership just flows around and around. Like you almost can't tell who the leader is. It's never based on titles or tenure. It's based on talent, in that moment.
Yeah. We did that. I love your acronym. I agree with you 100%. A couple of thoughts here that we can go back and forth. In a Blue Angel Air Show, we actually exchanged the lead with the solos. Sometimes as number 5, I'd have the lead. Number 6 would be the opposing solo. Sometimes you'd give the lead to your teammate, especially we always took the harder role. So the person who had more experience would take the harder position. And sometimes that's in the back. So when we would do this thing called a tuck over roll, you're coming, down the crowd line about 500 miles per hour. You already hit it. You both roll inverted upside down now as a team. Okay. In fact, I want to talk to you about being inverted perspective shifts, right? And then you would actually, as the lead, I would take the back and I'd let my teammate be consistent. And then I was constantly flying off him or her upside down, 100 feet off the ground. And then you say, ready, hit it. 270-degree blind roll. So you talk about total commitment, trust, right? Roll inside and you come out and you see the rivets of your teammate, right? And all that maneuver to do it precisely required all 8 of your attributes there.
Wow, that's gnarly. That's gnarly. And you know what I love? I love the leadership perspective on that, in a lot of cases, people think that like once they get into a leadership role, that means that they're done with the hard stuff, that all the hard stuff rolls downhill onto the new guy. And like, it's the exact opposite. You actually take more responsibility at that point and not less. And in the fire department, I've had experiences with those great kind of leaders where they realize that my job now is the success of everybody on my crew. And I have to actually work harder to ensure that happens. And then I've had captains that were the exact opposite, where the minute they got their bugles, that was the end of the hard work for them. And it meant that, that we were the dogs and they were on the sled. And our job was to pull them through the day. But I love that. Like, that makes total sense to me, that the more experience you have, the higher leadership level you have, the more responsibility that you have. Like, leadership isn't a privilege, it's a responsibility.
Exactly. And we didn't take it as your rank. The way we did it on the team was the person with the most experience took the leadership role. So you could actually be junior. You could be one of the younger people on the team from a leadership standpoint, but you took the lead and you were trained and mentored to do that. And we constantly were training and mentoring each other. Give me a couple stories from one of your adventure races, 1 or 2 of those times where you learned something about yourself.
Oh, something about myself?
Well, and the team, something about the team, something about yourself. Maybe it has to do with adversity. I love the concept of adversity there, overcoming that.
Oh gosh. Okay. So let's see. In adventure racing, let me see. I'm going through my adversity management. Well, I can tell you a story about where I had to borrow a heck of a lot of courage from a teammate.
Yeah, let's hear that.
And if you want to actually see the video, we have it. If you want to see it.
Cool.
So the first time I was super lucky enough to race with the best team in the world.
Which was who? Really Who's the best team in the world?
At the time, it was a team called Eco Internet.
Okay.
And it was started by some internet geeks on the East Coast, and they got together with some Aussies, and they were like just super talented athletes that were also like nerdy enough that they didn't have all their egos wrapped in a bunch. And they recruited great navigators from Australia, New Zealand, and it just created this amazing team. And I desperately wanted to race with them because I took second place to them in my first big adventure race, and I was like, I want to race with them. And I wrote them a letter, and it's like, hey, here I am. I want to race with you guys. Yada yada yada. I end up going to the World Championships in Ecuador with these guys, and to this day, this is still the longest, craziest race for the win in the entire history of the sport. It was 9 days for the win.
Wow. And how many people are on the team? Is it 4?
It's 4 or 5, depending on the rules, depending on the race. Like, it started out with 5 and then kind of went to 4 and then went back to 5. And depending on if it was Mark Burnett's race or Gerard Fusil's race, it's sort of, 2 different, one was Eco Challenge and one was the Raid Gauloise, the 2 different championships.
Got it.
And so in the middle of this race in Ecuador, we had to summit a 19,700 foot active volcano in the middle of the race, which meant that, and it started with a 75-mile run at 14,000 feet elevation. So we already hadn't had any sleep for about 3 days. Well, we had 1 hour of sleep the last 3 days. And then we get to this hut at 15,000 feet on this mountain. And we're not sure if we're in the lead. We think we're close to the front of the pack. We were big competitors in these years with the top French team, Team Intersport, because the French invented the sport. And we were the first international team to challenge them at this game. So we get to the hut at 15,000 feet, middle of the night. We're not really sure where we are in the pack. The French, our biggest rivals, are coming up the mountain, like right at the same time. We meet at the hut. And we're like, they're French, Team Intersport. And but we're all like a complete train wreck, like a disaster. I'm a total train wreck. The only way I can get air is to cry. So I'm crying and crying. I'm blue. I can't breathe. I'm a disaster, but so is everybody else, but I'm kind of the worst among us. And so the race doctor at the hut at 15,000 feet, before we were going to do this out and back loop to 20,000 and then come back down and then continue the race, the race doctor looked at the top 2 teams all laying, in some degree of near death on the floor in this hut. And he says, well, we got to change the rules right now, because if the top 2 teams look this crappy, we can't imagine what the rest of the race looks like. So for the first time in adventure racing history, you were allowed to split your team up, because in adventure racing, you have to be within 50 yards of your teammates the entire time. You can never split up. And if one person quits, your whole team is disqualified.
Right.
But they said, okay, since this is an out and back, we have some options here. You can leave someone at the hut and get a 5-hour penalty. You can take someone to 18,000 feet and then they can come back down and you get a 2-hour penalty, or you go all the way to the top, but you have to get at least 3 people to the top for your team to stay in the race. So there's a lot of tactical decisions to be made. And then the race doctor jumped in and said, okay, I also want to make sure these people have enough oxygen to live. So I want to make sure that,
that's
everybody,
nice.
It's a thing. Yeah. He said, I want to take everyone's O2 sat and make sure that everyone has an O2 sat of at least 70%, before I let them out of this hut.
Okay.
Now,
hey, by the way, real quick, we used to have a saying in naval aviation when you came into the break. We said it's better to die than look bad. Now that was only a saying. You didn't want to actually do it, but keep going. So I love where you're going. You're.
So he's looking at all of us and he's like, I need every one of you to put your finger in this O2 set. So like as a firefighter EMT, like if someone's O2 sat is like even 90 or less, we're taking them to the hospital with lights and sirens, so we're like, okay, 70 seems good. It's like a good number. So we're all lined up to go out this hut and he's taking our O2 sats and everyone's kind of like 90, 88, 86, 87. I put my finger in the O2 sat and it said 71%. And so like, I already knew I was dying, but now everybody else in the hut knew I was dying. And so of course there was really no option but to leave me there and get the 5-hour penalty. But my teammates kind of looked at me and I said, hey, do you think you could just drag me to 18,000 feet and then I'll only get the 2-hour penalty? Like we're roped up anyway, just drag me up there and then I'll roll back down or slide back down or something. I don't know, but I'll get down here. But I don't want to get the 5-hour penalty. I want to get the 2-hour penalty. So they're like, okay. So we rope up and we start climbing. We're climbing through the night. And the only reason I remember any of this is because it's on video. This next part of it is they have a close shot on me and I'm in the snow and I'm crying with my hood over my head and I'm eating this cookie and I'm just crying and crying and crying because that's the only way I could get air. And I'm thinking about like, how am I going to get down? Like, how the hell am I going to get down this freaking mountain? And then I feel my teammate put his hand on my shoulder and he says, you ready to go, Rob? And I said, yeah, Robert, but I don't know how I'm going to get back down. And he said, oh, you haven't heard yet. Robert and I have high altitude pulmonary edema. And the doctor is telling us we need to go back down. So
you're going.
You have to go up. And he put his hand on my shoulder. He looked into my eyes and he said, you can do this, Rob. You can do this, Rob. And because he believed in me, like just so far beyond reason, like it didn't make any sense whatsoever. We also discovered later that not only, did I also have, the beginnings of high altitude pulmonary edema, but I had 104 fever this entire time also. And so, but because he believed in me, I was like, oh, well, Robert says I can do this. And so I just stand up and you can just see me on camera, just doing this, like almost like a zombie, like, okay, like trying to wrap my brain around, trying to get to 19,000 feet when I was dying, at 18.
Right.
And so my teammates literally dragged me to 19,700 feet where we got to the top of this active volcano, and they had this huge, awesome helicopter shot of the three of us just with our arms around each other crying at the top of this thing. And I mean, we were just a disaster. Like when we finally got back down and met the rest of our team, we had, so many green things in our lungs that when we coughed them out, they were like sponges. They were green sponges that had been lining like the inside of our lungs. And we all had crazy high grade fevers. And our crew didn't even let us take a nap. They're like, okay, get up, get on the bike. Let's go. And, but it's just one of those moments where I realized the power of somebody believing in you so far beyond reason, that you want to rise, like you want to rise to the occasion for them. Like, even if you have not 1 ounce of energy left in your soul, not 1 ounce of drive or fire left in your soul, and you're wondering how you're even going to survive. And then to climb another, to get to 20,000 feet, no sleep, no oxygen, and then race another 250 miles up and over the mountains and whitewater raft 3 more days to the finish line. It's nothing you would have ever been able to do alone. There's just no way. This is why they find bodies all over the place on these big mountains, because, they didn't have the belief and love and support of their team. And I realized the power of it, that day. Like, it was the first time I'd come upon something that I literally could not have done alone. Yeah. And with the team and with their belief in me, suddenly I went from crying in the snow and eating a cookie to standing up and saying yes. And it wasn't me, it was them.
Yeah. What's that role of empathy play in that ability, that you mentioned earlier? How does empathy play into the team?
Well, like, you have to genuinely and deeply believe that these people care about you as much as they care about themselves. Right. Or in fact, to keep the team together, you almost have to care about these other people more than yourself.
Exactly.
Because if you have 3 or 4 other people looking out for you, more than you're looking out for yourself, you always have those 4 people watching you. So like when you focus on what you can give instead of what you can get, from the team, that's where the magic happens. When you have 4 people like feeding you, loving you, telling you to drink, wiping the snot off your nose, like singing with you, like when you know that those 4 other people are watching you and loving you and caring about you, and then that happens for every single person on the team. They care about each other more than they care about themselves. You can't go wrong. You can't miss.
It's interesting on the Blues. I have footage of this too, of my crew chief. We'd walk out to the airplane and my crew chief would be there and it'd say, "Sir, the jet's ready to go." And you noticed everything was not only in its correct position, but he'd hand wiped, all the bugs off the windshield, because a little bug, it looks like an airplane 2 miles out, right? Oh, yeah. But here's what he said. And he didn't say this directly to me. He said this in an interview on a documentary. He said, "My job is to keep him alive." And I thought, how cool is that when somebody wakes up every morning or is part of your team and they're thinking about keeping you alive as a leader. You're thinking about others, not yourself at all, in fact. And my always feeling was, I didn't want to hurt anybody else. I wanted to do my job so that everybody else could be safe. And then you look at them. So how does that relate to what you're saying?
Oh, same exact thing. I raced with enough people that were just very ego based. Yeah. And as talented as they were, we never won. They were all like way more talented athletes than the teams I won the big races with. Yeah. Just in terms of the physicality, in terms of even that, one guy I raced with was a best ranger, other guys were Navy SEALs, and like these incredible like physical specimens. Sure. But if they couldn't leave their ego at the start line and all they cared about is how they looked and that they carried their pack and that they didn't accept help from anybody, like we always say, like your ego is the heaviest thing in your pack. You can't bring them to the race course with you.
I love that. The ego.
Yeah, we could never win with the ego-driven people.
Yeah.
Because
We
it was
used to
all
say,
about them.
check your ego at the door. I like what you
Yep.
said. Check your ego at the start line, right?
Yeah, it's
Because
the heaviest thing in your pack. It really is.
that's a great line. That's great. Give me some other, what are some one-liners? What are some live withs that you live your own life through? Whether you learned them from racing or learned them in the fire department, what are some one-liners or quotes that you like to live your life by?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of Robynisms in my presentation
Yeah.
and in my brain.
Yeah.
Let me go through a couple. Well, they're all just kind of based on things I've learned over the years. But commitment starts when the fun stops.
I love that line of yours. I love that line of yours. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many people that quit when things aren't fun anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, no, you haven't even crossed the start line of commitment yet. Like you actually realize you're committed when it's not fun anymore. That's where commitment actually kicks in. So for you to say you're committed, you have to get to, you have to keep going to the finish line. And then another thing that a lot of people kind of latch onto in my presentations is the term winning is that way. And it was kind of based on something I learned the hard way from my buddy Ian, who was one of my favorite teammates, incredible navigator, Aussie guy. But in our first big race in Ecuador, as we were going down like the 3 days to the finish line, we were being chased by the French, of course, as we jumped into the rafts, like we jumped in ours, they jumped in theirs. We were just a few minutes apart. And my brain had always operated on like fear of failure versus hope of success. And so my brain was all wrapped around the axle about where they were, like where was our competition. So as we were going down the river, I would just kind of paddle, and then turn around and paddle, and then turn around. And finally, Ian was so annoyed with me, like where my focus was, because all I could think about was not losing. That one time I turned around and he was so mad, like he took his paddle and he threw it in the boat and he grabbed the top of my head, which was facing backwards. And he physically spun my head back around to face forwards downriver. And just off the cuff, just one liner, he just leaned over in my ear and he said, winning is that way. But it like talks about focus, right? Like where is your focus? Are you playing to win or are you playing to not lose? And that really changes your perspective. Like what if you're focused on what it takes to win versus what it takes to not lose? And kind of literally in that moment, my buddy on the other side of the boat heard Ian say winning is that way. And his brain started spinning about, what? He's right. Like what can we do to win? And when we got to the next transition, we pulled another thing out of our, whats and like created a brand new way to take the equipment that every other team was using and do something completely different with it. And what we did was the race director like took away each team's whitewater raft and handed each of us 2 inflatable canoes. So our competitors quickly grabbed their canoe paddles, jumped in their canoes, and they were gone down the river. And my buddy Steve said, hey guys, hold up. I got an idea. I want to tie our 2 boats together. He wanted to take our mountaineering climbing rope from the mountain and tie our 2 boats together like end to end. So he could like use our climbing rope through all the D-rings on the outside of both boats and make one big long boat. And then he said, like, and let's not use canoe paddles. We're a much stronger kayaking team. We have our kayak paddles in our gear box for the next section of the race anyway. But nobody had ever thought to use like kayak paddles in these canoes before. So we just pulled out our kayak paddles and made them longer to fit around the sides of the canoes. And we ended up creating what we called the Steve Gurney missile. And it was so cool. Like Steve Gurney was like one of the smartest people I've ever met. But with our boats tied together and using our strength, which was kayaking versus canoeing, we not only caught that team, but we blew their doors off as we passed them. Like when we passed them on the river, their boats spun around. Like we actually created a whirlpool, and we ended up beating them by 2 hours at the end of the race. And we couldn't shake them for 9 days. But it was all that that idea that like let's focus on creativity and what it takes to win and operating in the white space and what we can do versus what we can't do. So that's another one. Winning is that way. And then I always think to myself, like, you always have to put a goal or a dream on your calendar. Like I can't live without a goal or a dream on my calendar. And so that's why we say like your dreams, they're always upstream. So if you're floating, you're not getting any closer. You know, like every single day, you got to paddle hard. You got to swim hard upstream, you know, and I think a lot of people just float, you know, and they hope that they come upon something in their life, you know, as they float down the river, you know, something interesting, but you're never going to get anywhere by floating. You got to swim hard upstream every single day and always put a goal or a dream upstream.
You know, I heard this once too, and it's aligned with this. It's also, you know, to have those step goals, but to reset your goal before you get there, which I thought was a very interesting point. Is that, you know, it's like on the Blue Angels, we said we would never fly a perfect air show, but we were striving for it. We knew what it looked like. So you're constantly resetting. And I remember towards the end of the year, you know, we're flying at 18 inches and it feels like you're still moving around a lot. You know, you still feel like you're just beginning, but in reality, as a team, you're just so much more in sync, so much more aligned with.
Right. When you're striving for something. Nearly.
Yeah, bigger than yourself too. And it's always bigger than yourself like that. Hey, I thought to wrap up a couple more questions. Where does gratefulness and gratitude, where, as you look back, you know, where did that fit into your strength? I mean, how did gratefulness and gratitude, how did you use gratefulness and gratitude to overcome adversity or other things?
Oh gosh. Well, I think when I my teammates always called me the Human Cockroach because like
great call sign, by the way.
Survive anything. I didn't need to eat. I wouldn't eat for 3 or 4 days, you know, but if I felt crappy, I just wouldn't eat. I wouldn't drink. I just always was able to like survive anything. Like my body could always fix itself. You know, and so I had total faith in my body until I realized I had end stage osteoarthritis in both of my hips. And that's where I had to like flip my brain around and realize that, you know what, I wasn't grateful for all the great things that my body did for me, you know, all these years. And now I have to be grateful. I want to be grateful because, you know, everyone's going to have something go wrong in their life, everybody. And I started being grateful that, you know, this wasn't, you know, like stage 4 cancer. This was something like I had something like fall into my life that could be fixed. And I started being so grateful for that. Like, you know, it's just going to be like, you know, gnarly steel pegs in there and, you know, crazy gnarly metal cups. And, but the gratitude to have something that I could fix started me kind of down this whole path of being grateful for, you know, instead of focusing on what I couldn't do, focusing on what I could do. And that comes from gratitude of, but I can still do this, but I can still do this, but I can still do this, you know, instead of focusing on what you can't do anymore. Exactly. And, you know, I think that, you know, and that's why I also started Project Athena was so that we could create these adventures that were totally doable for people, you know, when maybe they thought their physical side of their life was completely over. You know, we're going, you know, no, it's not. You can do this and we're going to help you. And
I'm so proud of you with Project Athena. I mean, you know, to see you taking your skills and helping others with that confidence, you know, that confidence wall you talked about, huge. Hey, are you seeing out there in the circuit right now? I know I'm seeing all kinds of companies wanting to get together again, to connect, to align, to commit, the resiliency that it takes. How do you describe resiliency when you talk about it?
I mean, it's that fall down 7 times, stand up 8, you know, just that, yeah, it's going to be weird. Yeah, it's going to suck. Yeah, it's going to be hard. You know, it's going to be all these things, but it's that way for everybody. Like no one gets a free pass. And so it's really the people who can focus on the finish line long enough to say, these are just challenges. These aren't roadblocks. This is a challenge. This is a challenge. This is a challenge. This is not a roadblock. And, you know, continuing to have that, you know, that idea that challenges, obstacles, great. I'm going to overcome them and I'm going to do it just as well, if not better than anybody else. So I'm going to keep going forward. You know, I mean, for me, there's no other way, but forward. You have to keep that forward momentum, whether it's a goal, a dream, moving the ball forward, like in every aspect of your life. If I go to bed and I haven't moved the ball forward, toward my multiple goals and dreams, like each one of them, I got to move the ball a little bit forward, a little bit forward every single day, or I'm just not happy. And when I get there, I got to put a new goal, and I move that ball forward, just a little bit. And I think it's when I talk about guts, for me, it's actually an acronym, because I think a lot of people think of like the gutsy move as this like crazy thing, challenging the norm, doing something that's never been done. But I think there's a lot more guts in what I was just talking about, like that day-to-day quiet perseverance, doing those little things, that matter every single day. It's not the big leap, it's the small steps that you do consistently, that create your success. And so I actually talk about guts as an acronym for going the distance, quietly persevering, unwavering in your patience and faith that you're going to succeed, but then also taking those calculated risks and shattering the norm. But I think the more important kind of guts is that quiet perseverance.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And that's where, you live that every day. Robyn, it's so fun to be with you again. I want to end on a thank you. Glad to be here. It's so much fun to be around someone who has that energy, has that guts, has that passion to give back to others, and see that you've accomplished it in such a big way. I know you're crushing it out there on the circuit. I can't wait to see you again. And I'm glad to be here because I'm What's that?
It's fun to be live again, like on stage.
I know, isn't it? Yeah.
You're seeing it too. Like people who are showing up to events now, they're all in, they're loving each other, they're hugging each other. And I'm like, yes, let's go. Come on. I'm with you. See you out there again.
We'll see you soon. What's one last leave behind you want to leave to the audience? What is the one thing you want them to take away?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, that we're never defined by our setbacks, we're defined by our comebacks.
Love it. All right, Robyn, super grateful. See you on the circuit. Glad to be here.
Thank you, my friend. I'm glad to be here too. Thank you for sharing your world with me.